Okay, things are looking good here. Now all I gotta do is tell Twoee to send up the wire. Hey, Twoee! Go ahead and send the wire up! What's that you say? I said, send the wire! What? A fire? No, Twoee, the wire. Feed the wire up the wall. You're waiting for a call? I thought we were running the Ethernet. Yes, that. We're running the Ethernet cable. Nope, it's not on the table. I got the wire down here. Those jokers.
Hey, Maccy, what are you and Twoee up to? Did you finish running all those wires yet?
Wires? No, we did not. We did not finish the wires.
I see what happened. You and Twoee found the AIM server that Veronica explained set up, didn't you?
You knew about this? And you didn't tell us?
Well, it was just set up.
This is amazing! Twoee already has his bio set up, and I even have this really cool motion GIF in my profile. Now to get the sound effects just right. Yahoo! No, not that one. Too derivative.
Well, while Maccy figures out just the right sound effect to set for his message noise, how about we go over some of the history of AOL Instant Messenger?
Welcome.
Some of you out there in TV land might be a little too young to remember AOL Instant Messenger, or AIM as it was known, but it was the messaging app of the late 90s and early O's. Its history isn't without controversies, though. For instance, did you know that when AIM was first released, the bosses at AOL wanted to fire the creator?
Fired? For making one of the best software programs of the 90s? For shame.
Well, you'll have to remember this was the 90s, and the internet with a capital I was still very, very new. Most people still only interacted with network-connected systems at their schools or at their businesses. Most computers were still offline or connected inside local hobby networks, totally removed from the information superhighway, as they were calling it at the time.
It's worth this dial at the time.
Most people were at least familiar with the text-based messaging over cell phones, known as the SMS protocol, but that's a topic for another time. Let's focus on the computer-to-computer messaging, which started all the way back in the 1970s.
The 1970s? We're gonna have to get Twoee up here to talk about that sort of stuff.
Probably. If you remember the episode we did on the logo software.
The one with the turtles?
Yes, the one with the turtles. As chance would have it, the same system that brought us logo actually played a role in messaging applications and even emojis that we use today. Logo as a software was originally developed for the PLATO project, or PLATO project, a project in the late 1960s created for academic uses on computers and mainframes. It was based in the University of Illinois and was initially developed on the ILLIAC 1 computer. This was a massive computer weighing in roughly at 4,000 pounds.
That's a lot of computer!
We'll have to do a deep dive on the PLATO project at some point, but suffice to say, it has a lasting legacy on the personal computing that followed. Some of the things developed from the system were forums, message boards, online testing, remote screen sharing, email, and even multiplayer video games.
Everything truly leads back to Oregon Trail.
That is kind of true, actually. The developers for the PLATO project were looking for avenues to teach students a variety of subjects, ranging from reading, writing, math, and science, all the way to learning music and languages. In 1973, Doug Brown and David R. Woolley recognized the need not just for learning subject matter, but for another important skill we need to learn early on: collaboration. Just as students would naturally do in a classroom, Brown and Woolley recognized the need for students in a computer-based setting to quickly ask questions and discuss topics with one another. They developed the first real-time text communication tool that could be used by students in a class setting to talk and share ideas as they learned. It was called Talkomatic.
A computer that makes tacos?
Not quite, Maccy. It's Talk, Talkomatic, like we're talking right now.
Aw, man.
There were a couple other point-to-point methods of transferring text that predated Talkomatic, but it's widely considered to be the first communication protocol specifically made for regular people and students to communicate and collaborate with one another, just like all the other messaging apps that followed. One unique thing about Talkomatic was that it was real time, down to the individual keystrokes, not just completed messages. Up to 5 students could watch the screen as several people wrote lines of text into their terminals and have it copied to everyone else's screens at once. There was another seat reserved for the teacher that was read-only, giving the class opportunities to interact with the lesson plans.
Oh, wow. Wait, you said only 5 people could type. That seems a little low.
You're right, Maccy. This was the early days of computing, and it was greatly constrained by the technology of the time. It was also limited to the internal network, set up mostly in large academic settings, such as University of Illinois, where PLATO project was based out of. It wouldn't be till much later that we'd have the tech to allow for more connections.
Internal networks, eh? What finally got messaging out of the laboratory?
That is a great question, Maccy. The earliest forms of the internet were being developed in parallel to projects like PLATO, but these are mostly developed for incredibly specific purposes, such as the military and emergency response communications like ARPANET. We would have to wait another decade until the early 1980s when ARPANET was finally expanded to CSNet, and then TCP/IP protocol was standardized.
Oh man, Miss Fox, that's too many acronyms.
It's all right, Maccy. Let's just say we had to wait for all the networks to speak the same language, a language that could be sent through the telephone lines for computers to use, hence the term dial-up internet. If you had dial-up, you probably remember the frustration of getting kicked offline because someone in the house picked up the phone. The first internet service providers, or ISPs, kept a walled garden approach to the internet. Rather than navigating to individually created web pages, these would be a service into themselves. You might know some of these early ISPs, such as CompuServe, Prodigy, and of course, AOL.
Welcome.
Oh, okay. But where did AIM actually start? Was it really in the mid-90s, or were people chatting online before then?
PLATO may have created the idea of real-time chatting, but it wasn't AOL who invented instant messaging either. The story of instant messaging can be traced back to a company called Quantum Link in 1985, about 6 years before Quantum Link became America Online. Quantum Link brought a curated internet service to folks with a Commodore 64, one of the most popular microcomputers available at the time, probably because it was cheaper than most others. On Q-Link, they had a very early version of the internet that was essentially a curated set of online tools and applications for the mostly text-based interface of the Commodore 64. One of the big selling points was the ability to play games with other users online and chat with people using the People Connection section. They could send something called online messages, or OLMs. This gave users the ability to send direct messages to each other in real time, all the way back in 1985.
OLM? That sounds a lot like instant messaging.
It was. The online messaging service was essentially the direct ancestor of what would become AOL Instant Messenger. Eventually, Quantum Link expanded to other machines, and not just the Commodore 64. Apple reached out to Quantum Link in 1989 to help create AppleLink Personal Edition. Engineers from both Apple and Quantum Link developed a nice, clean graphical interface with easy-to-understand buttons and icons. While Apple users could enjoy AppleLink, the back-end and underlying infrastructure was mostly Quantum Link.
I had no idea AppleLink was Quantum Link.
Not everyone knew about AppleLink Personal Edition. It was priced at $15 an hour during peak time. That's the equivalent of $43 an hour today.
Holy cow! That's way too expensive!
Most people agreed with you, Maccy. The cost was prohibitively expensive, and adoption was not very high. Eventually, Quantum Computer ended their partnership with Apple. But that isn't where the AppleLink story ends. Quantum would then go to transform the AppleLink service into their own software, and in 1991, they rebranded it as America Online.
It was Apple the whole time?
It kind of was. Moving into the early 90s, AOL started to be adopted by the growing number of users who were finally opening up to the idea of owning a home computer. This ramp-up was largely driven by three major factors: the reduction in price as technology advanced, easier to use interfaces thanks to Mac OS and Windows 3.1, and the oncoming commercialization of the information superhighway, aka the internet. There was also another key change in how the internet itself was getting set up. Starting in 1989 with The World, which was a commercial dial-up ISP, it allowed users to access websites directly. Websites created and maintained by individual users rather than targeted websites that were inside a walled garden like QuantumLink. While this innovation led to an explosion in the variety of number of web pages users had access to, it also added another layer of complexity for the novice internet adopter to navigate. You have to remember, this was the early 90s. Search websites like Yahoo or Google didn't exist yet.
No Yahoo? How would anybody find anything?
If you wanted to go to a website, you have to either know the precise URL to enter or remember the AOL keyword that was popularized by AOL. The AOL keyword was a way for AOL users to kind of expand outside its walled garden situation and allow it to be more of a general commercial ISP. For millions of people, AOL was the internet, and other websites were just a bonus. Throughout the 90s and into the new millennium, AOL was a lot of people's primary access to the internet and the main source of email, news, and the way to stay connected with your friends online.
Oh man, I remember doing the AOL keyword thing too. AOL keyword Nick, AOL keyword request. But that still wasn't AIM, that was just the internet.
I'm getting there, Maccy. Just hold on 1 second. One of the main features of AOL and QuantumLink before it was the People Connection section, which brought chat rooms to AOL.
Ooh, it was kind of like dial-up Discord.
You're kind of getting the idea, Maccy, with one main difference. Since there were fewer people online back then, there were a lot fewer chat rooms to choose from. However, one of the big caveats compared to modern messaging was that these chat rooms and direct messages were only available to America Online subscribers. And back in the early 90s, at least before 1996, this was a per minute rate, which could add up to a massive bill if you stayed online chatting all day. So most folks would chat for an hour or so and then jump offline to save money.
Oh man, I forgot about that. I accidentally caused a $200 bill one month. Boy, was I in trouble. But the Super Mario chat room was going over how to beat the Rainbow Road.
So in 1994, AOL users were able to chat with each other, but it was extremely limited. Users didn't even know if their friends were online at the same time. So in 1994, an engineer at AOL named Barry Appleman, totally no relation to Apple, began prototyping the concept of a buddy list. This little feature gave users the ability to see who, if any of their friends were online in real time. A concept that we definitely take for granted now, but this was the forefront of the internet communication at the time. Some AOL employees who got early access didn't really like it at first, and they thought of it as a stalker feature and were really uncomfortable knowing their coworkers could see if they were online, which is a little preview of the privacy debate we've been having over the last 30 years.
Oh, that's why Gessie's always like, I hate the Teams bubbles.
I totally get where she's coming from. The always-on presence of knowing if your friends are online or not can be kind of a stalker feature. The buddy list was also called the buggy list by a few early adopters by how often it crashed the AOL. The buddy list went live as part of AOL's 3.0 release in 1996. It was one of the first mainstream implementations of what we call presence awareness, essentially knowing if someone is online and available.
So now we have the buddy list, but what about the folks that don't have AOL?
Well, that's a good observation, Maccy. In 1996, the AOL buddy list and the chat rooms were limited to only AOL subscribers. But another project was getting started. Appleman and his fellow engineers, Eric Bosco and Jerry Harris, started to work on a secret standalone application for messaging folks. Their vision was not just connecting AOL users, but connecting the world. After long, sleepless nights of working on their passion project after work, they were ready to launch their new side project into the world. They called it AOL Instant Messenger, or AIM.
Woo!
There was just one teensy tiny holdup, however. They needed a beefy server to actually run the service.
Oh no! Since this was a secret from their bosses, how'd they get the server? They have to go steal one from HP or something?
Actually, Maccy, they kind of did that.
Crime!
According to a 2019 Inside Design interview with the AIM team, they asked their friends who worked on the server side of AOL if they could discreetly lose some servers that were being prepared to get sent back to HP.
Double crime!
Since AIM was a secret project at first, the team couldn't really advertise its existence. It was unceremoniously posted to the AOL download section with no fanfare and no announcement. On its first night, they hit only about 900 consecutive users, but this quickly grew as it spread by word of mouth and, as we all know, spread through all the chat rooms across the internet. Normally, when a software team creates a paradigm-shifting new feature, the company is rather happy, but not so much for AOL executives, though. The part they hated was that AIM was free. It didn't require an AOL subscription or any kind of payment to use. Anyone on the internet could just download it and use it. Appleman told Mashable that the executives wanted to kill it and wanted to fire him for the whole stunt. But by the time they found out, AIM was already gaining users so fast that killing it would have been a PR disaster. So, in a way, he was saved by his own success.
Well, it's a good thing it never actually got canceled. It was massive!
In 2001, there were 36 million active users. By 2003, that number had swelled to 195 registered screen names, sending 1.6 billion messages in a day. At its peak in 2006, AIM held 52% of the entire North American instant messaging market.
36 million users! Woo-wee! I was one of those users too. Those were the days.
AIM was so big at the time that not only were kids using it to stay in touch with their friends at home, but people with office jobs were using it like they would Slack or Teams today. AIM was their internal way to communicate in the office without having to stand around the water cooler or walk to someone's desk. But the big use was, of course, home use. Some of you might remember the late nights spent chatting with your friends, building up your buddy list with all your classmates, and looking up ways to make your AIM profile just right. AOL and AIM basically was the internet for a lot of folks at the time. For us Mac users, though, we had to wait until the next year, 1998, to get our hands on AOL Instant Messenger when version 2 was released in the middle of 98. When it finally did come out, it was written and compiled for Motorola 68K machines, which was totally great for us classic Mac users. But in 1998, Apple was already a few years into the PowerPC changeover. Users with more powerful PowerPC Macs didn't have the best experience running the old clunky app. But for all of us now in the future, we can benefit from this since the Motorola 68K application easily runs on classic Macs from the SE30 to the iMac G3 with no problems.
Well, I'm glad AOL paid attention to the best processor, the Motorola 68000.
The popularity of AIM can't be understated. It got so popular that some developers who wanted more from their AIM clients ended up developing their own PowerPC native applications before AOL even had a chance to make it themselves. Some super nerd users even developed the Next Step application. The first major side-developed application was called Fire. It was made by a company called Epicware as a Next Step application. And since Apple's OS X was based on Next Step, Fire came along for the ride. Due to AIM's unprecedented rise in popularity, other major companies like Microsoft and Yahoo developed their own chat protocols in an effort to lure market share away from AOL and AIM. The big selling point of Fire was that it was a multi-protocol client that combined these newer protocols with AIM, such as MSN, Yahoo, ICQ, and Jabber. Fire pulled all these protocols into one single app. The catch was that Fire used a reverse engineer protocol for AIM, which meant that it worked great until AOL changed something on their end, which broke Fire. The other popular app was Proteus, made by Defaultware. Proteus was similar to Fire, but it had a neat trick. It let you run multiple accounts per service simultaneously. So if you had a personal screen name and a work screen name, you could be logged into both at the same time. Both Fire and Proteus were popular in the early OS X days, and they were the true lifeline for Mac users who wanted a native PowerPC AIM experience without the clunky classic emulation.
Huh. I thought Mac OS used to have AIM built right in, Miss Fox. Is that true? Or was I thinking of something else?
Well, your memory is correct, Maccy. At Apple's 2002 Worldwide Developer Conference, they unveiled their new operating system, Mac OS X Jaguar, and it shipped with a native Mac application for AOL Instant Messenger called iChat. iChat was the first official AIM client that was truly native to Mac OS X with real Cocoa code and a beautiful Aqua interface. Apple had a leg up on the competition since they had worked out a deal with AOL to use the official Oscar protocol, which is the backbone of AIM. It wasn't reverse engineered like Fire or Proteus, so it benefited from updates rather than suffering from breaking changes from AIM. Apple also made sure that iChat fit into its larger ecosystem, such as having speech bubbles in the UI, buddy photos, and address book integration.
Check out those awesome bubble chats.
iChat was popular enough that Apple kept adding new features. In 2003, they released iChat AV, which added voice and video chat. By 2004, by the release of Mac OS Tiger, you could even set up a 4-person video conferencing right from your Mac.
Ooh, it sounds like FaceTime, but, not FaceTime. But, Miss Fox, iChat isn't around anymore. What happened to it?
Well, in 2003, that was probably peak AIM usage, and competitors started to rise up from unexpected places. Text messaging was actually starting to take off in the mid-O's as texting went from 10 cents to unlimited. This drove more people to use their cell phones as the main form of text communication. If you had a cell phone, it didn't even need to be a smartphone. You could now send a message to nearly anyone everywhere. Also, young upstarts at the time, Google and the Facebook, started to capture the instant messaging market away from the established AOL, MSN, and Yahoo. In 2005, Google launched Google Talk, built right into Gmail. You didn't even need to download anything. It was right in the browser. Starting with college campuses first, Facebook grew to widespread use by the general public around 2008 or so. That's when Facebook launched Facebook Chat. AIM's biggest advantage has always been its social network. All your friends are on it, so you had to be on it too. But Facebook was building an even bigger social network, and their messaging was built right into the place where people were already spending their time. Also, with the release of the iPhone and the App Store a year later, people can now use Facebook or Google Chat on the go. The AIM engineers actually tried to convince AOL management to evolve and adapt, but management didn't listen. Later versions of AIM got loaded up with ads and games and bloatware, driving users away to lighter alternatives like Pigeon or Fire or Trillion. By 2011, AIM's market share had collapsed to less than 1%. They lost 64% of their remaining users in a single year. And on March 3rd, 2012, unfortunately, AOL laid off most of the AIM development staff. AIM's Oscar protocol servers kept going on for another 5 years, But on October 6, 2017, AOL officially announced that AIM was shut down on December 15, 2017, which was a long 20 years and 7 months after that quiet launch on some lost HP servers.
Oh no! But if AIM is gone, how did Gessie send me a message on it earlier?
Well, AIM isn't completely gone. And if you're watching this channel, I know this is the part you've been waiting for. There are several revival projects out there. AIM Phoenix is a server run by Wildman Productions that works with older AIM client versions. And Nina.chat has restored compatibility with classic AIM clients as well. So if you have a classic Mac running Mac OS X or a machine running OS X with iChat or Adium, or even a classic Mac running the 68K build of AIM, you can actually connect to these servers and use AIM today.
It's still alive! Mwahaha!
And our friend Veronica from Veronica Explains has this awesome new video showing you exactly how to set up your own AIM Oscar server so that you and your friends can have your very own private AIM network. I'll link that video in the description below. AIM's legacy is alive and well with us today, not just in the revival servers, but in the chat apps that we carry in our pockets to this day. iMessage on your Mac and iPhone is a direct descendant of iChat, which was built on AIM's protocol. OA messages became status updates in Discord or Slack. Screen names became handles. The AIM chime sounds became push notifications, and LOL, BRB, and TTYL, and all that internet shorthand came from people typing fast in AIM conversations. Slack, Discord, and Teams, and essentially every modern messaging platform with a contact list, they're all direct descendants of what AIM pioneered.
Oh my goodness, Miss Fox. AIM was bigger than I ever thought. It went all over the world. That's pretty amazing.
It's crazy to think that a little messaging app managed to kind of change the whole world when it was released. A little side project from a group of developers managed to seemingly connect everyone on the internet for almost a decade. And with those connections, it changed the whole trajectory of big tech into something more,
Bigger?
You're kind of right, Maccy. AIM really created a new way for people to talk with each other through their computers. A lot of us remember the times we spent late at night talking to our friends down the street about the new At Lost Star episode, way past our bedtimes. We also remember a time we didn't have to sign so many terms of service agreements or go through age verifications. Privacy concerns could be summed up with don't talk to strangers. In hindsight, it seems like we left the walled gardens of early AOL and CompuServe just to kind of stumble back into different walled gardens, but this time made by Facebook and Discord. Where we once used the computer to talk to our friends and family, now it seems like big companies collect our posts and data and they tell us about our friends and family. What was once an active process seems to grow increasingly passive as time goes on.
Yeah, I just want to talk to Gessie and Twoee on Pigeon a lot more than I want to talk to him on Facebook. Wait a second, I'm not even on Facebook.
I don't think Facebook is right for you, Maccy. Well, that was the history of AOL Instant Messenger, from Quantum Link on the Commodore 64 to the secret Skunkworks project of AOL Instant Messenger to iChat, Adium, Fire, Proteus on the Mac, and all the way to the shutdown in 2017. But also, don't forget about the awesome revival projects keeping it alive today. I want to hear from all of you. Were you an AIM user? Did you use iChat or Trillian or maybe Pigeon? Most importantly, what was your screen name? Drop it in the comments. If you want to dive deeper into the history of AOL, I recommend picking up Kara Swisher's book, AOL.com from 1998. She has an incredible inside access to the company during its peak. And also the book, How the Internet Happened by Brian McCullough has a great chapter on AOL as well. I'll link everything down in the description, along with the Smithsonian article and, of course, Veronica's video on setting up your own AIM Oscar server.
Thanks for watching another episode of Macintosh Librarian. Remember, we're brought to you by viewers like you over on Patreon. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye. See you next time. Hey, Mackie, did you and Twoee ever finish running those Ethernet wires?
Uh-oh!